Good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and this is episode 33. Today we're going to take a look at the American Nurses Association, but first of all, I want to wish you a happy Sunday. It is a wonderful day. I just got to hear a wonderful message online from my pastor, so that is absolutely wonderful. It makes me happy, happy, happy. I pray that you're having a wonderful holiday season and that your Christmas was absolutely beautiful and that you are surrounded by good and kind people. That's always a positive, right? That's a wonderful thing. And then secondly, I want to give a shout out to some of my listeners. So Texas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma. And then there were some other countries in the other podcast, Canada, Great Britain, I believe Denmark. Let me pull up my list. It's really interesting to see all the different countries that have been listening in. It's really neat. So here we go. United States, Canada, Great Britain, Netherlands, Slovakia. Hey, Slovakia, how you doing? Good to see you there. South Africa, Japan, and Denmark. Awesome. Good to see all of you. That's wonderful. So, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. So, I was able to look up that situation I told you guys about where there were some young people that were protesting, and I say young people, they're like teeny boppers. I don't even know if they were able to legally vote, but they were protesting in front of our neighborhood Walmart in one of my hometowns. And I looked it up, and it had to do with Black Lives Matter, and I totally forgot about that. And it said, their slogan was really weird. It says, "Your silence is violence. Black Lives Matter." Here's the thing. These kids, these teeny boppers that most of them cannot even vote. I don't even know if they can drive. They're not educated. And that's not dissing them at all. It's just saying, hey, you haven't even completed school yet. And yet they're protesting. They have every right to protest, but they were protesting in a small town where people generally are nice and kind, and they're not for discrimination of any kind, really. It's rare to come across it. And I mean, back in the day, there was some discrimination, but that was also during Jim Crow laws. So that was, gosh, over 60 years ago. So like way back in the past. But anyway, these young people, they were standing out in front of our neighborhood Walmart, yelling at people, like being aggressive. And it got so bad that some people called my mom. Excuse me, they called my mom. Hold on a second, let me get a drink of water. Sorry about that, I had something caught in my throat. They called my mom, and someone called me and said, hey, don't go to the neighborhood Walmart. There are some nutty people out there. They're protesting because of Black Lives Matter. And they're approaching people. They're yelling at people. They're being hateful and mean. And so that's what really bugged me about that, was that, you can protest. I'm not against protesting. That's a right. That's a freedom. But they're abusing that freedom by being mean and hateful to people. So if anything, they were not really able to recruit people into their little cause or whatever, because if you're just promoting hate, then that's not really the right thing to do. And here's another thing, saying your silence is violence. Your silence is violence. Black Lives Matter. Sometimes people are silent because the other person is being so hateful and so belligerent in what they're talking about that they're not even seeing common sense. Like they're just so hateful that it's so shocking that people just get quiet. So if anything, these young people, I think a lot of people actually need to know how to properly protest. You do it in a kind, gentle manner. You don't get in people's face. You don't scream at them. It was just really bad. It was so bad that we got phone calls about it. People that were like, hey, if you were going to Walmart, don't go. And what sucks about that is that, there are some people that they go to Walmart to get their prescriptions, but they couldn't go because you have these hateful protesters right outside the store getting in people's faces, and people felt that they were scared. They were scared to go to that store. First of all, to get their groceries, but more importantly, to even pick up their prescription medicines that they need. So it's things like this where Black Lives Matter. Well, I gotta say, that doesn't really satisfy me. And that doesn't convince me, because you know what? All lives matter. All lives matter, because if you raise up one life over another life, then you have promoted discrimination right there. And you have promoted hatred, which is what these people did. And they're just these, I was going to say stupid young people. And I say stupid because when I was their age, it would never dawn on me to behave that way. It would never dawn on me to yell things like this at people. And it would never occur to me to join an organization that just wanted to cause division within our country. Because that's not being a country. That's basically like guerrilla warfare. And if you want to act like a guerrilla, go to the zoo. Because that's where it belongs. It does not belong out in society. Because a society has rules, laws, and regulations. Even though I'm a Republican and a capitalist, we do have laws and regulations and mandates and things like that for a reason. I just don't believe in having a ton of them. But, we do have the law of the land. And we're supposed to honor and respect each other. And very few of these Black Lives Matters protests were very peaceful. They were very rarely respectful. Just not on the up and up. So, if anything, they brought a lot of violence wherever they were. And I'm surprised that this Black Lives Matter little rally or protest, I'm surprised it didn't lead to destruction of property. Because that's what a lot of these Black Lives Matters protests did. It just incited violence amongst the people that were supporting Black Lives Matter. And they used it as an opportunity to loot and rob other people. So they basically gave themselves permission to steal. Well, here's the thing. Thievery is thievery. I mean, what good does it do to be a part of an organization like Black Lives Matter and then become a thief? It's dumb. Like, that doesn't help your cause at all. If anything, it makes it look really bad. And it's, Black Lives Matter has been has been proven to be not a good one. And it just caused a lot of problems in our country. Because what we should focus on is that all lives matter. Because when we look at it as all lives matter, then you have that value of human life at the forefront of your mind. Because it's not just I matter or just you matter, kind of having that not very kind tone to the voice. It's all lives matter. Because that's the goal that we have. That's the common goal that we have in this country, is that all lives matter. But we still have laws and regulations that we follow to keep the peace and to respect other people. There's a saying from this gentleman that I know from India. They have this saying from their village. It says, your rights end where my nose begins. And that's very true. Because that creates equality. Because if someone's rights are viewed as more important than someone else's, then technically neither of you have rights at all. And you're not practicing equality whatsoever. You're practicing favoritism, which is never appropriate in terms of this. So anyway, that's just kind of some housekeeping there with that. If I think of anything else, I'll bring it up at the next podcast or whatever. So hold on just a second. Okay, I'm back. I had to take off my jacket because I went for a walk and I was still getting a little hot because it warmed up outside, which I'm glad. That's really nice for Oklahoma because usually we're used to freezing weather. So it's nice to have a little warm Christmas, as they say. Well, let's go ahead and get started on this next labor union. It is the American Nurses Association. So we'll go over the facts real quick. It is also known as the ANA. They were founded February 11th and 12th in 1897, so a good while ago. Their type is a nonprofit professional association. This one actually lists their tax ID number and their legal status. So their legal status is a 501c6 is what it says. I've never heard of a 501c6. That's news to me. It says their purpose. It says here to advance and promote the improvement of health standards and the standards of nursing, and to stimulate and promote the professional development of nurses and advance their economic and general welfare. Their headquarters are in Silver Spring, Maryland, in the United States. It says the ANA Enterprise Chief Executive Officer is Loretta Cole, and she's got all these abbreviations. I have no idea what they mean. I'm guessing it has to deal with the nursing field. And the president is Ernest Grant, and he's got all these abbreviations. One of them is PhD, RN, FAAN, just like a big old long litany of it. It says they have all these different subsidiaries. So American Nurses Foundation, Inc., American Nurses Credentialing Center, American Academy of Nursing, says Institute for Nursing Research and Education, Marketplace, Inc., and ANA Service Corporation, Inc. Their total revenue for the year 2017 was $45,051,913. That's a lot of money. And their expenses, they're overspending. Their expenses were $48,366,000, so they're in the hole by almost $3 million. That's kind of sad. They have 255 employees, and they have 699 volunteers. So that tells me that they're overpaying their workers and they're overspending on money, and they're having to rely on volunteers because they don't know how to manage their money. That's what that tells me. They used to be called the Nurses Associated Alumni. So let's go ahead and start on the history here. So it says the American Nurses Association, also known as ANA, is a 501c6 professional organization to advance and protect the profession of nursing. It started in 1896 as the Nurses Associated Alumni and was renamed the American Nurses Association in 1911. It is based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and Ernest Grant, PhD, RN, FAAN, all these abbreviations, is the current president. They obviously want you to know they're educated, so we're basically not a peasant. It says the ANA states nursing is the protection, promotion, and optimization of health and abilities, prevention of illness and injury, alleviation of suffering through the diagnosis and treatment of human response, and advocacy in the care of individuals, families, communities, and populations. Now, first thing off the bat, one thing that came to mind with this is that I'm glad that they have an association that really helped bring about better education within the nursing field, because I meet nurses that are not educated and they need to be. And I have met one nurse that she's I don't know if it's considered a nurse practitioner, but she's like a specialist. She was taking the place of a doctor until this healthcare facility could find a doctor to take over that particular position. And she was really good. I mean, she should have gone to medical school. But anyway, I'm glad that we have associations that promote education, because I've met so many nurses that don't know what they're talking about, but yet they want to play doctor. It seems like everybody wants to play doctor, but with someone else's life. And I'll give an example of this. I can't tell you how many times I've been to doctor's appointments, and the nurse will come in, take my vitals. They don't always know how to use that blood pressure cuff, and I'm just like, that's basic. That is basic. So they don't always know how to do that. And then I'm trying to think. Oh, there's this one nurse. She tried to diagnose me before the doctor came in, and she started critiquing me. She was mean to me, and I was just sitting there thinking, what in the world is this woman doing? I mean, it was like she was on a power trip. You know, she had one of these coats on, making it seem like she's a doctor, and she's not. And it's just a uniform. Like, I'm here to see the professional. I made an appointment to see a doctor, not a nurse. If I was seeing a nurse, I would find someone more educated than this particular woman. And so she starts diagnosing me. So I just said, I really just want to see the doctor. See, because here's the thing. What I've noticed is that the more they have nurses do, the more they try and take over the appointment. And I don't like that, because the appointment belongs to the patient. Not the doctor, not the nurse, not the scribe, not the front desk, not the insurance company. It belongs to the patient. Because without the patient showing up to be treated, none of those people would have jobs. They wouldn't have a paycheck. So this lady is trying to diagnose me, and she's completely wrong, and she could tell I was getting irritated. And I was like, look, I just really want to see the doctor. I don't want to have to repeat myself. Just, can you please go get him? And it was a serious thing I was seeing him for. So he comes in, and he's all happy-go-lucky. And I just think it's so interesting when you have male doctors and female nurses. It just really, like, some of these men are so stupid. I don't know why. I think you have some men that are really stupid, and they just hire women to do the grunt work. And what they don't realize is that when these men are becoming lazy, which that's what it is, they're becoming lazy, and they're putting all these additional responsibilities on these women workers that are not educated enough to have that kind of job, because they're not a doctor. If they're a nurse, they're not a doctor. But unfortunately, because these doctors are getting lazy and they just want to make more money but do less work, they put these responsibilities on the nurses, and then it's the patient that gets put in the middle. And then that's not even including some of the inappropriate relationships that take place at these medical clinics, where you have these doctors that are sleeping around with these nurses. And I mean, that's been going on for a long time. So half the time, the patient might be walking into a situation where the doctor and the nurse are obviously in a relationship outside of their marriages. And usually what I found is that either the doctor will be married and the nurse will not, or they will both be married but to other people and they're having affairs. It's like right and left. It's sick and it's gross because they work in the medical field. But yet they're behaving like that. So, but here's the thing, like more and more medical practices, they're slowly stripping away the responsibilities, all these different responsibilities from the doctor, and they're putting it onto less educated people. That is not good medicine. That is bad medicine. That is socialized medicine. And I'll give an example of that. Like, I was watching a YouTube video about, I can't remember the name of the area in Great Britain, but there was just kind of this promotional video from their National Health Services, I guess it's called, NHS or something. So they made this stupid little video about these young nurses. They're the ones that go visit the patient at their homes and they take their blood pressure. Like they're doing the follow-up visits. These patients, these residents of these villages are not even going to see a doctor. And then these nurses that are kind of silly and kind of stupid, they're just very immature. I was just like, this is the medical field. Grow up. Like people's health are at stake with this. Like you can't be like skipping down the lane, and that's what they were doing. It was completely immature. It was ridiculous. I'm like, grow up. But see, here's the thing. Their government is okay with that over there because they have socialized medicine, because they would rather these people that they think are pretty much not worth seeing, they would rather just pawn them off on the nurses that are not very educated and are immature, rather than have these patients who have serious healthcare conditions, rather than have them go see the appropriate doctor, because doctors are more expensive. But I came across that video and my mouth just kind of dropped. And so what this Nurses Association was trying to do over there in Great Britain was they were trying to promote the nursing field over there. And I'm like, well, that's why their healthcare sucks. They've got immature brats taking jobs that they should never be in, and they're not treating it seriously at all. And these people, every single one of these patients that some of these nurses went to go see, they either needed to be in a hospital or they needed to go see a doctor. Because these nurses were so uneducated. I mean, they weren't spotting things that even I was spotting. And I'm not even a medical practitioner. I just thought the ignorance of this is just unbelievable. But I don't know what kind of curriculum they have their nursing schools do over there in Britain. But I mean, if they're sending out immature people like this to supposedly take care of people, I mean, it was shocking to me. I just thought, how dumb can you be? It was really weird. But the way they get away with it, how they fool the patient, is they just make the patient feel real happy. Oh, hey, I'm here to see you. You know, and then they basically try and get involved in their private life. They ask them how their families are doing. Like basically, it's like therapy. It's like a counseling session. And all they're doing is it's really just mind manipulation in a way. I mean, do they probably care? Maybe. But they're just putting on, it's almost like a skit with each individual patient. And so they're just going into these people's homes, getting involved in their private life. And I don't agree with that. Like, you need to be careful who you let into your private life, because they may or may not care, and they may just be trying to fool you. You know, they may just be trying to fool you so that you don't get the proper medical care. So what they do is they kind of, how do I word this? It's kind of like when someone just wants to make you happy with what you have, as opposed to giving you what you actually need. Does that make sense? Like, that's what it came across to me, and that's what I didn't like about it. But another thing it reminded me of was that stupid show called The Midwife. You know, you've got these nurses, well, they weren't even nurses, they're just midwives, so they're not even really educated as much as a nurse, which is sick, because they're delivering babies, which is, you know, if you don't have proper medical care, the odds of you dying from giving birth, it can be over 25%. But the reason why the death rate of mothers and infants is really low now, it should be low, is because now we have proper medical care. We have doctors, we have C-sections, we have hospitals, we have all these things. But anyway, so what this video that was promoting the nursing profession over there in Great Britain, what it reminded me of was called The Midwife, which is based on the midwives in the 1950s who just ride their bicycles over to someone's house to help them give birth. I mean, if someone showed up, if I was pregnant and someone showed up at my house on a bicycle to deliver my baby, I'd be like, you have got to be out of your mind. Please, get back on your bike, go back to your ice cream shop and have a chocolate malt. I'm going to the hospital. Like, grow up. Like, it was just shocking to me that Great Britain is still utilizing kind of that old medicine, kind of like old midwifery, kind of obsolete medicine on people that actually need the best health care possible. But they don't care to give them the best health care possible because it's socialized medicine. So that's what it reminded me of. The other thing that their so-called purpose statement reminded me of was when they say, it says here, I'll just read it again. It says, the ANA states, nursing is the protection, promotion, and optimization of health and abilities, prevention of illness and injury, alleviation of suffering through the diagnosis and treatment of human response. See, that's a problem there because it's not nurses that diagnose. They don't even treat. It's doctors that do that. Because they technically don't have the education to do it. And they shouldn't be diagnosing. That's what has been happening in some of my doctor's appointments. Whenever they send a nurse in, like, I just keep it short and sweet. I'm like, hey, I can't wait to see my doctor. Like, I keep it, as chill as possible because I don't want them to think that I'm there to see them. Because oftentimes what they'll do is they'll send the nurse in. And mind you, the doctors are okay with this. Okay, which I don't know why they are. But bad doctors are okay with this. What they do is they send a nurse in. The nurse tries to take over the appointment, and the nurse is like, oh, you don't need to see the doctor, but yet they charge you for seeing a doctor instead of just seeing a nurse. So they're still making that money, even though they didn't provide you with all the services that you were promised. That's another thing, which is technically a form of fraud. So, but here's the other thing. So it says, in this, it says alleviation of suffering through the diagnosis and treatment of human response. I find that kind of hard to believe, and I found this out, through hospice care. I've known some people that have died and they didn't have to go, but they went, their families put them through hospice. And I didn't know a lot about hospice. I thought hospice was an organization or a professional group of people that you call to basically alleviate any kind of pain and just help someone pass away naturally, so to speak. What I didn't know about hospice was how horrible and evil it can be. And here's why, and it shocked me. So if you're not familiar with hospice, this is probably going to be shocking to you. What I didn't know until someone that I knew died was that what hospice does, when you call them in, you're not dealing with a doctor, you're not dealing really with educated nurses, you're dealing more along the lines with medical aides, which are kind of the bottom of the barrel in terms of education, in terms of medical professionals. Well, they're not even professionals. They're at the bottom of the barrel of people that are extremely uneducated in terms of the medical field. So what hospice care does is they charge all these thousands of dollars for you basically to let your relative die. And so what happened, in actually both these instances I can think of, what they do is they bring these hospice workers in. They basically take over the house. At least that's what's happened here in Oklahoma. And they basically take over the house. They want to know who's entering, who's leaving, all this stuff, which isn't their business at all. They don't own the home. It's not a security guard situation. It's just a relative is it's hard to say this, at the end of their life, so to speak. And so what hospice does is they basically remove all food and water. They don't give the patient any more food and water. They basically starve them. And they put them on, they may or may not put them on medical prescriptions that alleviate pain, or they knock them out. So that way they don't know that they're slowly dying and being starved to death. That's what hospice does. Hospice helps your loved one die a lot quicker, but in a really horrible way. And so I look at it this way. if you or I were to take away food and water from a relative that we're supposed to be taking care of, you and I would go to jail. And if you are in Oklahoma or Texas or one of these other more extreme capital punishment kind of states, you and I would probably be put on death row for doing that, because that would be seen as attempted murder. And if the person actually died, it would be murder. It would not be manslaughter, it would be murder. Because it would be seen as intentionally killing somebody and being cruel and inhumane. However, hospice does this. They get away with it legally to do it. That's their profession. Because I was kind of wondering, when I was younger, how are they helping people to die? Because at that time we did not have assisted suicide in the United States, and I still do not think we should have assisted suicide. And I'll circle back to that in just a moment. But I learned a lot about hospice, and when I realized what was really going on, and mind you, I was not directly involved in these two different examples, like directly their care. I wasn't in charge of anything. If I had been, I would have kicked those evil people out and would have been like, you are getting water, you're getting food. Whenever you pass away, it's between you and God. But, if I'd been in charge, I would have never done such a thing. But that's what hospice does. So it's really gross. It's grotesque to me. But anyway, it really shocked me so bad that I told my parents, this is quite a while ago, I told them, I said, if ever you are so ill that it looks like we need to get hospice, I'm not calling in hospice. I'll take care of you. I will find the right people to also help take care of you. I will never restrict your food, your water, your nutrients. Never. That is so sick. That is so cruel. And to do that to somebody in their final days of their life. I mean, how is that any different than what happens to some of the animals that are not being treated very well, that the ASPCA, I think that's their abbreviation, the people that are associated with the Humane Society, if it's not okay to do that to animals, then why are we doing this to people? And we've made it a profession. That's how sick that is. Now, to circle back to the assisted suicide, here's what I don't understand about that. We have assisted suicide, but yet we also have a suicide prevention hotline. Well, here's the thing. If assisted suicide is considered an option to people, and it's considered socially acceptable, because morally it's not acceptable, because we are all called to live out our destiny, regardless of how tough it gets. Because you never know. If you're ill, for example, modern medicine might come out with a treatment and it might be released on the market just in time when you need it. So don't kill yourself, ever. Don't ever do that. That is unbelievably wrong. But here's the thing. So now that assisted suicide is legal in some states, I think we have 2 states in the United States that have legalized assisted suicide, which is that's legalized manslaughter is what that is. It's not right. Anyway, so what I don't understand is that if we have assisted suicide, when someone calls the suicide hotline because they're thinking about killing themselves, do the volunteers that pick up the phone go, oh, you want to kill yourself? Hey, we completely agree with you on that. Here are 2 different clinics in the United States that offer that service. We don't know how much it charges. We don't know if it's covered by your insurance, but hey, if you want to kill yourself, that's great. We believe in freedom. We believe in democracy. And we think that if you don't want to live anymore, that's great. Go to these 2 clinics. They'll help you die. Now, anything I just said just a moment ago, was that even appropriate? No. Not at all. Because when someone is calling a suicide hotline, they are in crisis. They are in a crisis. And it's the job of whoever picks up that phone at that suicide hotline to help save them. Save them. Save their life. Help them to realize their life has value, regardless of their situation. Help them to stay alive, want to be alive, and have a good, happy life. Because here's the thing. Crises are temporary, but death is permanent. I mean, I just don't get it. I don't understand why we now have assisted suicide. Like we've known for years, it's been over in Europe, and we know that Europe is a little weird with that because they have slowly become more and more secular, and they have removed God from so many things. And when I say God, I don't just mean like one particular church, but here's the thing. If you don't have God in your society, you really don't have much hope. And that's what people need. They need hope. They need a fresh start. They need a new beginning. And whenever someone is in their crisis mode or they're in a crisis, they know they're in a problem, that they know they're in a crisis. And so when they're calling and crying out to somebody, they're not calling out and crying out for someone to agree with them that they should just die. They're actually crying out for help. So then how is it that we can have a suicide hotline, but then also have these assisted suicide clinics in the United States, or even have them anywhere on the planet? I just don't get that. I mean, I don't get how. Here's where I'm confused on this. And if one of you that's listening, if you have any ideas on this, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Because I think it's good to communicate about stuff like this and really learn from other people. But here's the thing. We have people that are against capital punishment because they say that person matters. Well, if the person that more than likely has committed a heinous crime, if people are saying that they should not be executed, then why are we sending the chronically ill and the terminally ill to be executed at these clinics and just calling it assisted suicide? And here's another thing. What if the suicide fails? Then you've got to rely on the doctor to go ahead and kill you off. Here's the thing. I don't know if people realize this, but when you are really sick, and let's say you're dying, your body is still fighting for you, even though you may be mentally given up, which don't ever mentally give up, because the battlefield is very much in the mind. So if you have a strong mind that I'm going to live, I'm going to get through this, then you've already beaten it by 80%. Like you've only got that 20% left to get back to your regular life, because most of it is in your mind. If you have the willpower to live, you can get there, because it's mind over matter. But here's the thing. If we've got people that are saying that execution is wrong, then how can we legally kill people at these assisted suicide places? Like how is it even legal to do that? How can we justify that? And here's another thing. If the suicide is botched, then you've got to rely on the medical doctor. Hopefully it's a medical doctor and not a nurse or a medical assistant or somebody else. Then you're putting that person on the spot to kill you. Well, here's the thing. Whoever you are utilizing to help end your life, you're turning them into a murderer. None of us are called to do that. Like we're not supposed to help other people sin. We're not. It doesn't matter whether you're Christian or not. I mean, I pray that you're Christian, because I think being a Christian is a wonderful thing. But even if you're not Christian, we're not supposed to help people lose their moral character. And here's the thing. Those doctors that are helping people die like that, the more they kill people off, the less human they are. And an example of that is in Auschwitz, with these concentration camps. They had doctors there at those camps. They took their medical training, their medical profession, and turned it towards killing. And they wanted it to be efficient killing. At first, they weren't really good at it. And they're like, well, we're wasting resources, we're wasting fuel, we're wasting poison on these people. We've got to find a better way to just kill off more in each time we do it. So they were trying to master the art of killing. If it's wrong for Nazi Germany to do that, which they did, the Holocaust did happen. If it's wrong for doctors at that time to do that, how is it okay to have assisted suicide? Even though there are people that are suffering and they're like, I just want to die. Here's the thing. Why aren't we telling them that, hey, there's new medical treatment? Why aren't we telling these people the good news instead of the bad news? And it comes down to, who are you listening to? Are you listening to a bad doctor, a bad nurse? Are you listening to your family members that they're ready for you to leave so they can get their hands on your money and your property? I mean, these things are real and they're serious. And I've come across this time and time again, and my mouth just drops because I value human life. And I think that if people are interested in assisted suicide, I would encourage them to call the suicide hotline and be encouraged. Or have someone pray for them. Even if you're not Christian, have someone pray for you. Prayer is powerful. God loves you. He always has, He always will. I mean, and we just celebrated Christmas. I mean, the birth of Christ. I mean, that's the greatest gift this planet has ever received and will ever receive is God's only begotten Son dying for us. I mean, being born and died for us, actually. So, I mean, I just don't understand how our culture can be so focused on living and then, going on vacations and then putting all this happy stuff on Twitter and Instagram. But then there are certain things that it's like a death culture. It's like certain forms of death are considered okay. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I just don't understand how some people can think, well, as long as I'm living this kind of life, I want to live. But if I don't get to live this kind of life, then I might as well be dead. Well, you need to watch what you say about yourself, because things will come to pass, whatever you say. But here's the thing. I don't do the same things I did when I was 18. I don't do the same things I did in my 20s. I'm 37 now. As we grow older, our likes and our dislikes change. And our health can change as well. So just because we get a bad diagnosis or something we don't agree with or something like that happens, none of us are called to give up. And we need to be careful what we put our faith in. Like, I would never put my faith in an association like this, the American Nurses Association, because here they are, they're saying that they want alleviation of suffering through the diagnosis and treatment of human response. Well, they're not doctors. Well, and here's another thing. Whenever a nurse has tried to diagnose me and then a doctor comes in, the nurse has always been wrong. Completely wrong. And she looked like an idiot. It's like, if you want to be a doctor, that's great. That is great. We need more doctors. But go to medical school. Go to medical school. There's nothing wrong with going to school. It's great. I mean, you learn so much and you get to do way more with your career, you earn more money, but here's another thing. Some of these nurses association, they're okay with doctors implementing doctor responsibilities onto the nurses because they want the nurses to make just as much as a doctor. Well, guess what? If you're not a doctor, you shouldn't be making that kind of money. See, because here's the thing. Let's say you get really sick. Do you want to go to someone that kind of knows what they're talking about? Whenever I get sick and it's something serious, I want to see I want to see the best. I want to see an MD or a DO, someone that's, been dealing with this disease for a long time or, can treat this really quickly or whatever the case may be. Like, I want the best of the best. I don't think, I'll just go to some clinic. Yeah, I think I'll just go to the health department and, I'll just see if they have something on a poster on the wall that could help me out. No, you don't do any of that. Like, your natural response is, I want the best possible treatment. I want the best possible health care. I want the best in the business. I want the best in this particular field of medicine. Like, don't ever sell yourself short. And sometimes this applies to our health care. Be careful who you take advice from on your health care, especially when it comes to your rights as the patient. Big time. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. This is about the history of the organization. It says initial organizational plans were made for the Nurses Associate alumni of the United States of America on September 2nd, 1896 at Manhattan Beach Hotel near New York City. On February 11th and 12th, 1897, those plans were ratified in Baltimore, Maryland, at a meeting that coincided with the annual conference of the American Society of Superintendents of Training Schools for Nurses. Isabel Hampton Robb served as the first president. A major early goal of the organization was the enhancement of nursing care for American soldiers. ICN was founded in 1899 by nursing associations from Great Britain, the ANA for the United States, and Germany as charter members. The first ever ICN Congress was held in Buffalo, New York in 1901. The next Congress to take place in the United States was the 9th ICN Quadrennial Congress in 1947, hosted by the ANA at Atlantic City, attended by over 5,000 delegates representing 250,000 nurses in 32 countries. It was a major step in reestablishing international peacetime relations in the healthcare community. I don't know why there would be wartime in the healthcare community, but I think they kind of need to stay out of certain things. ANA leadership made all arrangements, including locating lodgings for attendees among local residents and raising funds to cover travel costs. In 1970, I think it's Matida Johnson spoke at an ANA convention on the lack of representation of African American nurses. She believed it was a major issue, which led to the founding of National Black Nurses Association in 1971. The next section is about their primary mission. It says the association is a professional organization representing registered nurses, also known as RNs in the United States, through its 54 constituent member associations. The ANA is involved in establishing standards of nursing practice, promoting the rights of nurses in the workplace, advancing the economic and general welfare of nurses. What they should be focusing on is the patient. See, because here's the thing, the more they just focus on the nurse and not the patient, the worse the quality of care gets for the patient. I've noticed that over the years. Because then, there was one time I had to go to the emergency room, this is a side note, I had to go to the emergency room, and the nurse starts to complain to me about, it was a male nurse, usually I hardly ever see any male nurses, but this male nurse starts complaining to me about the nursing job, nursing union and other things like that, and was irritated at the doctor, all this stuff, and I'm just laying there in this bed in ER, and I'm just looking at him like, just bring me the doctor. You know, I wanted to say, you know, the guy that you probably can't stand, but he's more educated than you, makes more money than you, but yet you want his money, but you're not going to get it because you're not as educated and you haven't been to medical school. I'm thinking all those things because I'm getting really irritated. Because here I am, the patient. I'm hooked up to a blood pressure machine. They're monitoring my heart. They're monitoring other things as well. And I'm waiting for the doctor to come in to help me. Because there's a reason why I was there in the emergency room, but this nurse chose to just lecture me about his situation. And it's like, I don't care. It's not my business. Like, I'm the patient. Like, I'm here for a serious health situation. You know, I wish everybody the best, but it's not my responsibility to listen to all that. I'm there to get treatment. So, yeah, I don't know how else to describe that situation, but it was weird. Like, my mouth just dropped. I was thinking, do I need to push the emergency button just to get someone else to come in here? It was weird. Like, I wasn't taken seriously as a patient because the nurse made my situation all about him and his career and this and that and all this. And it's just like, dude, I just don't want to say, just do your job. Just do your job. Get me the doctor if you don't want to do your job. Get me the doctor anyway, but seriously. So the doctor comes in and everything was fine. I got treated and everything like that, and I didn't tell the doctor at all what this nurse did, and I have no doubt this nurse, just side note, I have no doubt this nurse was very frustrated. I have no doubt. But those frustrations are never appropriate in, I don't know how to describe it, in the patient room, in the emergency room. Like, those kind of conversations need to take place between that nurse and their boss, or maybe their association, or maybe their nurses union. Like, it just took me aback. I mean, it was just bizarro. But anyway, I'll move on. So the next section says, ANA also has 3 subsidiary organizations. American Academy of Nursing, to serve the public and nursing profession by advancing health policy and practice through the generation, whatever that means, synthesis, whatever that means, and dissemination of nursing knowledge. The next one is American Nurses Foundation, the charitable and philanthropic arm. And the third one is American Nurses Credentialing Center, which credentials nurses in their specialty and credentials facilities that exhibit nursing excellence. And it lists a couple of notable members and things like that. But anyway, this is definitely an interesting one. What I would like to see nurses do, and what I think they should do, is I think, here's what I want to see. I know that the nursing field, there are different paths to becoming a nurse. Like you can start out almost like a medical aide, like bottom of the barrel, and then you move on up with training and things like that. But then there's also those that go to college and they get a 4-year degree, because back in the day, the nursing field, there wasn't a nursing degree. If you wanted to go into anything medical, you were becoming a medical doctor. Well, now nurses have a 4-year and sometimes a 6-year degree, depending on these other credits that they take. What I think they should do is I think that they should have a separate career path for nurses. If they want to act like a doctor, then they need to be given an opportunity to go to medical school. And here's how I think they should do it. In their last year of their nursing degree at a 4-year university, they need to incorporate some very difficult medical school classes that medical students, like kids that are going to do medical school, whatever classes they would be taking in their final year at a 4-year university, have nurses take those classes and see if they're even eligible, and then also see how they did in those classes, and then have them take the MCAT. And I say if they score really well in those same upper division sciences classes that medical students would take in a 4-year university, if they score well on those and they do really well on an MCAT, then I think they should go to medical school. But if they can't pass the MCAT, then they should not do anything that is in regards to what an MD or a DO should be doing. And that is what I think should happen, because I have met a couple of nurses over the years that they should be doctors. I was impressed. There was one of them that she was brilliant. I was impressed. I just thought, why did she become a nurse when she could have been a doctor? Maybe even a researcher or something. Like, she was just really smart. I don't know why she did the nursing degree. I was like, man, but sometimes you just meet some really smart people, and sometimes they know what they want to do. And, I have no doubt she has knocked it out of the ballpark wherever she is. She is really talented and whatnot. But anyway, that's what I think that they should do, that they should give people a chance that if they're doing the nursing degree at a 4-year university, have them take the MCAT, have them take all these other classes that would normally be utilized for medical students, and see if they could possibly be a candidate to get into medical school. That's what I would do, because we need more doctors. We don't need more nurses. There was one time, I'm trying to think, I had to go to a doctor's appointment. There were so many nurses in my room, and I just thought, how much is this costing me? That's immediately what I thought. How much is this costing me, and when am I going to see the doctor? Because that's the thing. It's like the more nurses they hire, the more difficult it is to get in to see your doctor. And that's the person that you need to see, because it's the doctor that writes the scripts. And I know there are some nurses that write scripts, but here's the thing. Nurses should not be writing scripts. Not like this. Because I kid you not, nurses, they make so many mistakes when writing scripts. I worked as a pharmacy technician many years ago, and it was a battle, really it was. The licensed the pharmacists were constantly having to call these nurse practitioners that were writing these scripts, and they're saying, you can't write that script for this patient. Do you know that could kill them? These nurses that were writing these scripts, they were so ignorant. Like, they were just, I don't know why they were writing certain things that they were, but I just want you to know that if it was not for your pharmacist, there would be a lot more people that would have died. Literally. Like, I think there should be a documentary on what pharmacists see and what licensed pharmacy technicians, what they have to deal with. Because there are so many nurses that write scripts for stuff. They have no business writing a script for that. And they don't understand what they're treating, what they're diagnosing. That's what it comes across. Because then the pharmacist is like, what did you diagnose them with? Well, if you diagnose them with this is not the appropriate drug. Are you aware of their medical history? Are you aware of this, that? I kid you not, the pharmacist was on the phone all the time trying to retrain or train these nurses or just educate them on stuff that they should have already known. We never had a pharmacist call a doctor and say, hey, you can't write a script for that. Never. That never happened. Never. Never, never, never. Not like that. The pharmacist never had to call a doctor's office and try and educate them. It just never happened. But when it comes to these nurse practitioners and some of these that can write scripts, it was very scary. The stuff that they were prescribing, and they had no business prescribing it. It was very concerning to me, and I am all for prescribing medications. I'm all for that. I don't think there should be any hindrances, because when someone needs help, when a patient needs to be treated, they should be treated. When they need a prescription, they should get access to their prescription. But if it's not being done in the right manner, and it's not being done in an educated manner, then we've definitely got some problems. And I kid you not, these pharmacists, they saved so many lives. So many lives. And yet the patient will never know. The public will never know. I don't think people realize how important pharmacists are. They are very important. Just so you know, pharmacists, they are way more educated than licensed pharmacy technicians. And I can say that because I am one. Pharmacists, they are very skilled, very trained. Very trained. So just realize that your pharmacist is on your side, and they are looking out for you, because they're looking at the drug not only from a diagnosis and treatment point of view, but they're looking at it from a molecular point of view. Meaning their training is specifically, how does this affect the human body for this disease or this diagnosis or this treatment, whatever the case may be. They're trained to look at it from a molecular, cellular level. Sometimes those words are hard to say, but that's how they're looking at it. So that's why they are trained to question things, and they're supposed to. And I tell you what, sometimes these nurses, they don't like being questioned, and they should be questioned. If something does not look right, the pharmacist has every right to call and verify what's going on. And I kid you not, every single time the pharmacist had to call one of these nurses that was writing these scripts, the nurse was always wrong. Always. They were never correct. Never. Whenever there was a bad script that came through. But I learned real quick that, if it wasn't for this pharmacist, our morgues would be filled with dead people. And there would definitely be an investigation. Big time. And this is in Oklahoma. I can't speak for other states because I did not work as a licensed pharmacy technician anywhere else. It was just in Oklahoma. But my mouth just dropped at the problems. Because what the nurses union has been doing over the years is they've been throwing their hissy fit. If ever I come across an article where I see that they've thrown a hissy fit, that would be one of those moments where we would go on Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon and award their association with the Hissy Fit Award of the week, the month, the year. Because what the nurses union have been doing is they have been systematically over the years trying to get the same prescribing rights as doctors, but yet they're not at the same educational level. And education matters. What you're certified in matters. See, and what these nurses associations are doing, they just want more power, more money. They don't care about the patient. They claim, we need the nurses to do more because we have more patients. No, we need more doctors. We need more access to our doctors. And I'll give an example of some of the shadiness that they've pulled. This was several years ago. I'll try and find the article on this, but several years ago, I think we had to vote on it. I can't remember how it went. But the Nurses Association and the nurses unions or whatever, they're in Oklahoma, they're saying that the people that live out in the boonies don't have access to as many doctors, so we need nurses to have prescribing rights to help them out there. And people are like, oh, that's right, there's not as much medical care out in the boonies, so because doctors don't want to do it, we should send nurses. That was a total lie. There were doctors out there, they were treating patients, and if anything, there were doctors that were willing to move their families out there, start a family, buy a home, all this stuff, because that's what they do. So unfortunately, this lie got spun that there's not enough doctors out in the boonies to help these areas, which is a lie. But unfortunately, the public believed it. And so nurses got prescribing rights. But guess what? Hardly any of these nurses moved out to the boonies to help these people. Guess what they did? They set up shop in Oklahoma City. So now there's all these nurse practitioner clinics just littered everywhere. But yet they're not helping the very people that they promised to help. They basically lied. All they wanted was power, prestige, money, and prescribing rights, because these nurses associations and these nurses unions, they know that if they can get prescribing rights like doctors, then they can avoid going to medical school, they can avoid doing continuing education in terms of being more educated as a doctor, even though they're not one, and that they knew that if they could get prescribing rights, then they could squeeze out the doctor and make more money. Because it's about money. Because nurses have always complained, oh, doctors have more money, doctors this. Well, guess what? They do have more money. Why? Because they deserve it. They went to medical school and they did residency. Here's the thing. Nurses don't go to medical school. They don't do residency. That's a problem. That means you have someone who is less educated working on your body, diagnosing you, trying to treat you. And then get this. Nurses, they hardly ever get sued for malpractice, and they should. Nurses make mistakes all the time. Remember in one of the previous podcasts, I talked about that girl that needed a kidney transplant, and her brother was a perfect match, and there was a part-time nurse that was helping out on the operation team in the operating room, and she thought that this healthy kidney that was taken out of this girl's brother was medical waste, so she threw it in the trash. Like, if a doctor had done that, he or she would have been sued. Oh my gosh, they would have lost their license. They would have lost their house. They would have lost their car. I mean, they would have lost everything. Everything. But do nurses get sued like that? No. They don't have malpractice lawsuits like that. Why? Because they're the nurse. They try and claim they're the victim. And it's just like, you know what? It's like they want the money and the prestige, but they don't want the responsibility. Because with great responsibility comes great leadership. And guess what? Nurses do not make good leaders. They just don't. Because they don't understand that if you want to treat a patient for something, you need to go to medical school. I mean, it's kind of like too many chiefs, not enough Indians kind of thing. Should some nurses go to medical school and become doctors? Yes, I've met some. They're great. I'm like, please go to medical school. We need you. But here's the thing. You know, it is not good to have people in a management or leadership role that have no business being in that management or leadership role. Because either A, they don't have the education, B, they don't have the experience, and more importantly, how do I word this correctly? They're not doing it for the right reason. They have selfish, ulterior motives. As opposed to, I want to help. I want to serve. It's about money. And we've seen that here in Oklahoma. And again, I think nurses are great. They have their place. That's awesome. But they make so many mistakes. So many mistakes. And no one calls them out on it. It's almost like, they call what's it called, the female card. It's kind of like sometimes whenever a woman gets called out on something, it's like they throw a hissy fit and they call the girl card basically. It's almost like, how dare you pick on me, I'm a woman kind of thing. It's like, this is not about sex or gender. This is about doing what's right. And it doesn't matter what someone's sex is. It's about doing the job correctly the first time. And if you make a mistake, take ownership of it. But what's interesting about these nurses unions, they don't ever really want to take ownership of the mistakes that their nurses make. They don't get sued. And I'll give an example. Have you ever read any cases in the newspaper where, or any stories in the newspaper or online where a nurse got sued and stricken off, like lost their license because of a horrible mistake they made? And they got sued and lost their house? And they can no longer practice? I have never heard of that happening. If I'm wrong, if you have an example, send it to me. I would love that. You can send it to yourlaborlaws@gmail.com. I will receive it there and I'll read it. The only cases I hear of are of doctors. Because they get sued right and left by ambulance chasing lawyers. And lawyers, they have a place to a certain extent, but there's some bad ones out there, and they just love money. The bad ones, that's all they love is money. So they're not going to protect you for the right reason. But anyway, most of the lawsuits I hear about that are regarding medical stuff is someone suing a doctor. They're not suing the nurse. I mean, that's just how it is. And that's a shame because it's the person that made the mistake should get sued. Like, for example, I'm trying to remember what case this was. There was one time a nurse made a really big mistake, and instead of her getting sued, the hospital got sued. I'm like, why should the hospital get sued? Sue the nurse. Here's the thing. You want to know why she didn't get sued? More than likely because she's in the nurses union. And number two, the hospital has more money. See, if I was a judge, I'd throw that case out and be like, it's not the hospital that made the mistake, it's the nurse. You want to press charges? Press charges on her, not the hospital. And here's the thing, take her license away. Take her credentials away. Don't take away the credentials of the hospital. Take away the nurse's credentials because that's the person that made the mistake. See, because here's the thing, if they're going to try and pass that kind of judgment on doctors, they need to pass the exact same kind of judgment on nurses, but they don't do it. It's like nurses get a free pass, but yet they want the same power, they want the same money, and they want the same prescribing rights as doctors. But they also want favoritism. That's not right. That's not right in any profession. And plus, that also lowers the quality of care for the patient. And we've seen that here in Oklahoma. It has been bad. It's like sometimes you gotta fight stuff tooth and nail here sometimes. It's sad, and it shouldn't be like that. Because you would think that if someone really values your health, they would put their arrogance and their ambitions aside just so that you can survive and live and not die. But I don't know what it is. I've heard this from other people that have retired from the nurses profession. They've said these young nurses, they are so arrogant and so pompous. It's bizarre. They're all told that they need to be a manager, but yet they don't want to clean out the bedpan. They don't want to help take someone's blood, and they're mean as a snake when taking someone's blood pressure. And some of these older nurses, they're just kind of throwing their hands up in the air like, what is wrong with this generation? They're all told that they should make over $100,000 a year and they should all be a manager. Well, guess what? If everybody's a manager, then who's the worker? All of them just want to be administrators. They just want the cushy job and the cushy office, but they don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the grunt work. Someone's got to help the patient get out of bed. Someone's got to help them with their IV bags. Someone's got to help them, get up and off the toilet, if they've just had a major procedure. I mean, that's just basic health care. But that's what some of these nurses, they go to nursing school, their minds are just loaded up with liberal garbage. And I mean that literally. It's, they're just told all these lies that, this is the kind of work that you should do and just leave this to other people and, you should want to be a manager. Hey, that's a great goal. But in the meantime, you've still got to do the grunt work. There's nothing wrong with doing the grunt work because where you learn the most? It's doing the grunt work. That's where you get experience. And I'll give you an example. Does it ever irritate you or bother you whenever you go into a place of business and you're having to deal with a manager that actually never did the job? They never ever did what the employees below them have had to do for years. They're so ignorant and stupid. Not the employees, the manager. Like they don't have a clue how this business runs. but yet they were just hired in as a manager. They didn't have to work up to that level. They don't have the experience. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the education to be in that management position, but for some reason, they're put in that management position and make management money, but they don't have a clue how to run anything because they literally don't have the experience. That's the same thing that these nurses are being told and taught in these universities, that they're just all, that they should just all be upper management and be in charge of the floor at a hospital, but yet they're not going to do any of the work. I'm sorry, get over yourself. Like, it's insane. And I've heard this from different people of different ages. It doesn't matter if they're like in their 30s or 60s or 70s or, anything and everything in between. It's a problem. Whatever they are teaching some of these young people in these universities, they're not teaching them to be humble. They're not teaching them to be good workers. They're coming out of college thinking they're all that in a bag of chips, and they're not. Like, all they have is the book work done. They have no experience whatsoever, but yet they think they're going to get in that cushy office and make $150K when they haven't even taken a blood sample yet. I mean, much less help somebody get in a wheelchair or help them out of a wheelchair, which is also one of the last things they want to do. Because I can't tell you how many people I have met in the healthcare industry that have no business whatsoever being in the healthcare industry. They're mean, they don't care about people, they don't have empathy, which empathy is more important than sympathy, by the way. They don't have empathy, they don't have sympathy, they're just there for the money, and then they get really angry that they're not making the money that they want to make because they don't honor and respect the job that they currently have. They are constantly wanting something that they cannot achieve yet because they were lied to. They were told that, oh, you deserve this. You deserve this. Well, you know what? If you're starting out at the bottom, no, you don't. You don't deserve that $150K job because guess what? If you don't have the experience, much less the education behind it, then if you were to be put in that position, you would be doing everybody you work with a disadvantage. Because you would be incompetent. That's the thing. We've got all these young people that are graduating from universities, especially from the nursing industry or nursing field. They're not competent yet. They'll get there, and that's a great thing, but they're not competent yet to do the management roles. But yet they're told that's what they should be doing. Well, sorry, someone's got to do the grunt work. That's how it is at every job. Get over it. Get over it. I mention that because it's been such a problem in Oklahoma, and I pray it's not a problem anywhere else, but it's just like, wow. And I never thought, let me put it this way, I never thought I would know that much about the nursing industry because I'm not a nurse. But unfortunately, I've met nurses that have that attitude problem. They like to wear the little lab coat with their name on it, and they make it look like they're a doctor because they put a stethoscope around their neck. And, they just carry themselves, they have that pompousness. They make it seem like they're a doctor. Well, you know what? When a doctor comes in the room, they don't have to prove that they're a doctor because they already know they're a doctor because they've been to school. But I've noticed that whenever a nurse comes in the room and they're trying to act like a doctor, literally they are doing everything they can to make it seem like they're a doctor. So basically they're lying, and they're trying to fool the patient. And it doesn't fool me because I'm like, well, the name on the coat does not match the name on the appointment card. So why don't we just get the person whose name is on the appointment card that I'm supposed to see? And sometimes these nurses get really mad about it. And it's just like, don't get mad at the patient because they want to see who they want to see. Be kind to the patient. I mean, kindness is always appreciated. And most of the time because it's rare. And that's very sad. But anyway, that is it for this podcast. Went over quite a bit. And I never thought I would know so much about the nursing industry or that particular profession. But it's one of those things that, if ever you've been to the emergency room, I've met people that have had good experiences and bad experiences. And if ever you've gone to a doctor's office and they're not really taking good care of the patient, you learn a lot. I mean, it's just life experience for sure. And it's like, wow, I never thought I would know so much, but it just is what it is. But anyway, the next podcast, the next episode, we will be going over the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. That should be interesting. This one goes back to 1893. So I love it when they go back to before the turn of the century. That's really good. Excuse me. But anyway, until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and also a wonderful Sunday. You know, this is wonderful to celebrate on the Sabbath. So that is a wonderful thing. But also have a wonderful and happy New Year. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.